Thank you very much. So, this light is in my face. So, as Joe said, what we see is a trend where for technology to be truly successful, technologies actually need to talk to business people to understand. So, unless it serves a useful purpose for business, it's typically can not as much value. And I don't know where to stand. The light is in my face. So, sorry. So, in my work, what I do is I lead people from different disciplines, psychologists who understand how people think and feel about the thing that they do at work, anthropologists who conduct social research and understand how people work in the context of working in a group and the culture and context of their work, computer scientists, engineers, strategists, business people and so on, to bring them together into collaboration where they can really work on design innovative solutions. So where a business person may need technology, they may not be able to articulate very well what is it that they actually need. Typically people ask for something a bit better than what they got. A lot of the work that we see done in software design in investment banking is about creating things that look like spreadsheets. So the city, the square mile over there, there's 300,000 employees. They're using things that look like spreadsheets. The design inspiration is Excel. They typically said, I need more rows. I need more screens. They can't find a way to articulate what they really truly need to become innovative. And you may have this word user experience or usability. Well, typically it's about making things that are usable, not something like this. Something that perhaps is easy to use, effective, efficient, the number of clicks, those kind of things. What people don't do very well is creating something engaging, something exciting. If you work in a trading floor or in a risk management or energy trading or in a healthcare company, you have a job to do and people think that the software just needs to be functional. And what I was finding, if you take, for example, this iPhone, people get excited about it. People go to Starbucks. I had somebody in Shanghai say, I need Starbucks. They didn't say I need coffee. They create some emotional engagement with a brand or product or a piece of software. And I was interested in what makes something exciting. And perhaps sometimes it's even more important than being usable. So if you take the Kodak company, for example, their slogan for many years was, you press the button, we do the rest. Until recently, they were a very successful company. Providing useful product was enough. But it's not always enough. Take for example, this staircase in Stockholm. A group of students did a little experiment. They built on the steps a musical staircase with sensors that play some music. It actually slows you down if you're in the rush hour going to work. And what they found is that more people used it. And they were jumping up and down and they were late to work because it was fun. It wasn't functional, it was fun. If you take this poor monkey in the 1950s, there was a group of monkeys separated at birth from their biological mother. Half of them had access to a mother that was a piece of wire, but had a bottle of milk. The others got this hot, kind of warm towel mother. Physiologically speaking, useless. They spent a lot more time with the towel. They created an attachment. If you take this, for example, this chair was designed by Charles and Ray Eames, also in the 1950s, as it were. And they said, we want to design something. They used the word not designing. Something that feels like it's yours. They wanted the leather to feel like an old baseball glove. So people create an attachment, just like that monkey. People love that object. If you look at this camera on the left, it's from 1970. It's a Leica M7. It looks almost exactly the same as the Leica M3 from the 1940s. Next to it there is a Fuji camera, a Japanese digital camera. It's not actually used on a rangefinder technology as the Leica. It's pretending though, in terms of how the viewfinder looks. It costs about twice more than a digital SLR camera of the same electronics. In times of recession, people tend to love retro design. It provides some emotional confirmation, some security. I recently worked on a project for people in Africa. They said that retro design is not the good old days, it's the bad old days. It's poverty. So that actually didn't work in their culture. Looking at this iPhone app, the one on the left, for something like Instagram, what it does, except for the social media side, is taking a photo that this phone doesn't take very well to start with. It makes it worse. Right? I mean, look at it. But it makes you feel like back in the 70s in your holiday in Cornwall, or back in your 60s with your grandmother. I mean, look at this microphone. It's an Apple, as you probably guys, most of you know, it's the Apple voice recorder. It looks as if you were Buddy Holly. I mean, most of the people here never seen one like that, except for Michael Paul. This, for example, is an app that you take pictures, and if you can see here, it says 12. That means I have 12 pictures left. When I take the next picture, I don't actually see it. It's only when the film is over, is finished, I click on a button, it said developed or developing, and I need to wait. And I got so frustrated with it, I stopped using it, but after a couple of months I continued, just like an old kind of camera like that. Then I found pictures I've forgotten I've had. And it gave me this feeling of anticipation. I thought that's really cool because it's less usable than the proper one. It's useless. If you look at this football coach in America, Motorola wanted to design for them this kind of headsets. They made them really thick and big for power and dominance. I'm the boss here. They say I don't want to look like a call center operator. It became a very popular product. It's actually heavier and more expensive. It does the same thing. If you look at this ATM machine, it looks ugly. So somebody did an experiment and they created another interface that looked exactly the same in terms of calls to action, labels, functionality, grouping of information. They made it look beautiful. And they asked a couple of days later what people thought about it, and they felt that the more beautiful one was more efficient. Efficiency is a translation of the energy cost, of the number of clicks, of the speed. It was the same. So we perceive things that are beautiful to be more useful, and they're not. We are attracted to beauty for some reason that we'll talk in a second about. This kettle is useless, right? But the owner of this kettle, who is an ex-professor of psychology in San Diego, he loves it. He wrote a whole book about it. This kettle is useful, unlike the other one, but what it does, rather than an intrusive kind of alarming sound, it whistles a beautiful composition. Take this mini on the right. There's almost no mini like another mini. You can personalize it. There's so many options. They start at 12, 13,000 pounds. By the time you finish your order, it probably costs you 25. But you make it look perhaps like that Mini Cooper that your dad had in I don't know, in Monte Carlo or something. So my dad never been to Monte Carlo. So it's all about emotional design. And the question is, what is emotion? From a psychological point of view, what is it for? What does it mean? So, well, what it means that it's a mechanism that we have in ourselves to help us to survive in this kind of environment. So if Joseph's investment in Skype didn't go for well and he got stressed, or if some account that didn't got the balance sheet balanced, or if I didn't meet my deadline, that's not the stress that my body is being built to cope with. I'm built for this kind of environment because I need more blood and glucose to my brain when I have these problems, not the kind of reaction that we have when we get stressed with cognitive tunnel vision, with a dry throat and all kind of heart changes and hormonal changes. They actually make me worse in what I do when I'm stressed, right? The kind of action I need in this environment are about my survival, to know what's good for me and what's bad for me and what I could really avoid. and I need to be able to communicate it to other members of my group. For example, I have only one chance to learn that being next to a lion isn't a good idea. So if somebody else just been eaten by a lion, the way that they scream and communicate it to me, I learn. I also need to learn what's good for me, which means there is a mechanism of, okay, that doesn't work very well anymore. There's a mechanism of emotions related to memory. There's some biochemical changes that make an exciting or an emotional moment memorable. There was an experiment where they've taken a group of people and they assigned them into two conditions. In one, they watched a movie of a few people robbing a bank, and in the other, the same guys robbed the same bank, but one girl got shot. They called them a week later and asked them to recall what they've seen. The people who saw the girl got shot possibly were more emotional when they saw it. There's a mirror neuron mechanism that allows us to get this kind of empathy. And what they found that they remember a lot more from the scene. But they also remembered a lot more from the time very next to when the girl got shot. It's important to remember those things. So, okay, so what is really, what is it, an emotion? So in English we use that word feeling. Feeling is not an emotion. Because I can say this, I feel this doesn't work very well. And that's not an emotion, it's an observation. Or I feel this is wrong about an argument. A feeling, really, it's only one element of an emotion. An emotion has 5 elements. There's a sensory element. There's something that I perceive and process in terms of what happened in my external and internal environment. Then there is an element of thinking about it. For example, is it jealousy or is it envy? Is it because she is with him or is it because he has that and I don't? It's not the same emotion, but it might feel the same. There is an action. There's really only very few actions I can take, which are fight or flight that we know from stress. There's also fright, freeze or faint. These are the kind of thing I do when I'm emotional because it's about my survival. Each of them has a mechanism. If I faint, maybe the animal think I'm dead and walk away. And then there's a feeling. The feeling is all these physiological responses which are very similar between different emotions. They might not be exactly similar, but it's very difficult to know. I can't take Daphne into a lab and see what her physiology is like when she's jealous, because how would I create jealousy? And when I put the syringe to check her hormones, I will also introduce fear. It's very difficult to control those kind of situations. So some problems in here. Okay. So how do we consider emotions when we design a product or a service? How can we make a product that they're usable? It's important that they're functional. If I'm a trader that deals with foreign exchange options, I need to be actually able to put the bookings. It needs to work for me. But it also needs to be useful. It will actually help me to solve a problem I have, a task that I actually have. And it's indispensable. It becomes a real tool in my arsenal of things I use. For example, Skype. I really want to use Skype and I use it and it becomes part of my communication. So it says the connection is gone. Okay. So we can think about it at 3 levels. There is some kind of a reptilian brain that respond to auditory and visual and other sensations. We need to consider that in the design. Perhaps it's the aesthetics. There is a behavioral element of tasks, so that's more of the mammalian brain. And then there is a reflective section, all those high cortex things that I do after I use a product. If you take, for example, a company like, okay, that doesn't work again. Shall I just ask you to move it? Sure. If you take companies like Starbucks, you see those kind of queues of people waiting for effectively a cup of coffee that they need to make themselves, and then they need to be the waiter and pay more for it. Why would they do that? So if you go to the next Well, they create these kind of maps where they think what happened to a person when they enter the shop, what happened to a person in the shop, what happened when they leave, and they map every experience point, every touch point with everything in the shop, what kind of emotions which could be positive or negative, and how to trigger those things. If you go next, please. You can also consider the states of objects. For example, this is for a kitchen towel, and if you go next, this is what it's like when it's finished. So that made that product very successful, and the person who bought one, his friend bought one, and then his brother wanted it as a present. So you can see this kind of humorous, but potentially humorous way of responding what happens when things are finished or go wrong. If you go next. This guy actually works for BMW. BMW, they have a lab. In the lab they have a professor of music and a sound engineer testing every warning signal, every auditory warning signal. It needs to feel BMW, it needs to feel German, reassuring. It doesn't really go wrong much. So every sound that they test on average 10,000 different sounds before they choose it. When they're done with it, now they need to do it for the Mini. It can be a bit more funky because the sound can be on brand. And when they're done with this whole thing, they do it again for Rolls-Royce. In Rolls-Royce, nothing can ever go wrong, so it's become a different situation. If you go next. So this is a simplistic way of the kind of work what I do, right? So what you see here, for example, is what the trading desk could look like, where people have instant messengers, they have radio systems, they have different types of phones, they have a Bloomberg feed of news, they have Reuters, and they have this risk system, credit system, and for every type of contract they have another booking trading system, and none of them actually talk to each other, and it's all in their head. And we send anthropologists, and they sit in those trading floors, and they research what people do, and they can then tell the bank what really happened, and how people really create their own idiosyncratic tools and post-it notes and all this kind of stuff, which is all part of what they do and how they think. And then what we do is we create these kind of maps, where just like Starbucks make a map of what happened in the shop, we can say a map of, I got the client calling me, what do I do? What do I do next? How do I put a price? How do I book it? How do I know it was booked? Something doesn't fit, not reconciling. We look at all the innovation opportunities, the pain points, the cognitive processes, but also the emotional reactions, because they're part of the competitive nature of it. And then we start to sketch ideas, like on the left. Just like a car designer creates clay objects and test them with people, we do something similar. We move into models like you have down there, and then we put it in a lab. And when you see a software really launched, we've already tested it many, many times in experimental laboratories and in context of usage and so on. And if you go to the next one, please. What happened? Okay, so this was example when something goes wrong. It's quite uncomfortable. And this is what happened when something gone wrong on a website that sells furniture. Rather than panicking, I laughed. So I didn't mind that it goes wrong. So we need to consider also when something goes wrong, what do we communicate, how we do it. That might not look right for Goldman Sachs system. So we need to consider the context and the brand. Next, please. So in terms of summarizing what we've said so far, in my work, what I do is I work with people from different disciplines across the product life cycle, typically digital products. And as you can see, going from the left to the right, we use project managers, strategists, psychologists, or other people who have a social sciences background, designers whose job is to explore the optimal form to create those reactions, emotional, cognitive, and so on, and technologists. And they all work collaboratively. And just like Joe spoke about, business and technologists, when they come together, then you can really innovate. We do the same on a more microscopic level when we are not in a vertical or sector like automotive or a bank, but in a particular part of a company. And this is where true innovation happen, and where we can actually help companies to leapfrog anyone else in their market. And that's it. What's next? Thank you very much.